Okay, in this video we're going to go over the morning check on a chainsaw. So the first thing that we're going to do when we look at the saw in the morning is actually see if we have the correct orientation of the chain. And to do that, what you want to do is by finding the cutting tooth, there's an angled part at the front of the tooth. And you want to make sure that that is directly behind the raker, which is essentially a depth gauge. So one of the issues that we're going to have is checking to see the tension of the chain. And as you can see on the bottom of the bar here, there's quite a bit of slack and gap where the chain meets the bar, and we're going to show you how to correct that. So to adjust the tension on the chain, we're going to loosen up the bar nuts using the scrunch that's located on the saw. And then you can see there's a spot between the bar nuts where the tension screw is, and we're going to tighten up the chain, we're going to insert the scrunch into the tension screw, and we're going to rotate in a clockwise manner, and that chain, you'll see, will pull up and meet the bottom of the bar. So at this point we want to tighten up the bar nuts again. Once those are snug, now we're going to check the travel of the chain along the bar. So one trick so you don't hurt your hand is to just use the scrunch, and then you run it. It should move fairly easy. If it's too hard, you've got the tension set too high, and if it's very loose, then you need to tension it back up again. And another way to check this is to actually pull up or down on the top or bottom of the bar, and the bottom guide should stay within the notch on the bar itself. Going over the starting procedures for the Stihl chainsaw. If followed correctly, it's very easy to start. So we're going to go over the typical procedure right now. So to show you where the positions are for the switches, the top position is off, followed by what looks like a letter I, that's your normal run position, followed by half choke, and finally on the bottom is full choke. Alright, to move the choke selector, first you have to depress the safety switch at the top of the handle, which will allow you to activate the trigger, throttle trigger. And then you can actually move the choke selector to the right position. So we're going to move that all the way down to full choke and then release. You can see it locks in. And at this point, we'll set the brake, the chain brake, so that it's for a safety. So that is set. And now we'll go ahead and start pulling. Okay, with everything set, throttle and the choke set in the right position, we're going to push the button on the top, which is a decompression button. It makes it a lot easier to pull. Once that's been depressed, we can go ahead and start pulling until we hear a burp, and at that point we're going to stop pulling. So once that, in the starting process, that actually burps, then you can move that selector to the half choke, and now with that change, now he's going to go ahead and continue pulling, and within a couple pulls it'll start. Okay, so we just let the saw run for a couple minutes, as you should, just before you go and do this next test. The next test is going to be to see if the bar oil actually lubricates the chain. So we're going to start the saw back up again, and at full throttle, we're going to show you the procedure to check and see if that bar oil is actually going to do its job. There you go. See this line of oil that eventually collected where he was aiming the end of the bar at is evidence that enough oil is lubricating the chain. Okay, the next thing we're going to show you guys is what happens if you do actually flood it. So we've actually purposefully pre-flooded this saw, filled the carb full of extra fuel, and we're going to show you how to clear that out in a quick manner. So you can see we're going to set that choke selector to regular run, and then we're going to place the saw level on the ground, and we're going to brace it while fully depressing the throttle, putting pressure on the top of the saw and pulling until that clears and actually starts. Alright, the final step we're going to go through is making sure that it's all topped off with the proper fluids. Alright, now the first thing we're going to check and make sure we have full of the reservoir is the bar oil. On the front of the saw is where you're going to find that reservoir. On the cap there's a key. You flip that up. You don't need a separate tool to access it, and that just twists counterclockwise, pops right out of there, and you can see we've got a full reservoir of bar oil. And finally we have the fuel tank. Same procedure. Got a key on the cap that flips up, quarter turn, that pops up, and you use the true fuel designated for the saw.